how is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to another episode of the JustBallin Podcast, our first episode since the trade deadline happened. And I feel like since the trade deadline happened, there's been kind of one word in the NBA going on right now, and it's tanking. I feel like no matter where you go, it's somebody coming up with a new tanking idea. And I would say most of them are just like so hard to implement. And I just feel like it's just everything everybody's talking about right now. What's going on, Tucker? How are you?
I'm good, man. I've got a bunch of fun facts for a bunch of teams we're going to talk about today. I'm bringing my A game today. I took a bunch of time to put together a really nice detailed document today. I'm ready to talk about actual basketball. I feel like all we've talked about is trades and hypotheticals and theoreticals and, like you said, a bunch of tanking stuff. I'm excited to talk about some actual teams today.
Oh, yeah, me too. So, yeah, we're going to basically kind of go back and forth and maybe draft contenders, but more so just be able to talk about them. So we'll each kind of bring 5 to the table. We'll bring up 10 teams and maybe where there could be some path for them to potentially win it all. Could something go right for them? How does the seeding look? How have they been playing? And maybe will the game slow down or speed up for them in April as well? Is there anything you want to kind of talk about before we get into this? Just like everything with tanking going on, I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's tough to listen to every idea that's like incentivizing tanking earlier, where it's like, I think we need to delay tanking as much as possible because I don't think there's any perfect fix out there unless we eliminate the draft or do something insanely drastic. It's tough to completely eliminate tanking. It's always going to be there. I just think if there's ever going to be a solution, it's to push it back as far as possible. Let people tank in late March, early April, but the fact that people are tanking in February, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, it's definitely relevant to what we're talking about today because I'm going through thinking about, we're going to power rank our contenders. And it's pretty clear at this point what our playoff teams are going to be. At least it's decently clear because all of the non-play-in teams are trying to lose games on purpose right now. And that just, in my opinion, that just can't be a thing on February 12th that half the league is trying to lose games on purpose and that every night on a night-to-night basis, it's hard to find a game where both teams are trying to win the basketball game. And we're 50-something games into the year? It should not be a thing that it's this drastic. In terms of solving it, I've always said it's going to be difficult to find the silver bullet to tanking because there's a competitive advantage. There's always a reason to do it. There's even some of the changes they've made to the lottery and all these different things, it has not even really changed teams' opinion of tanking that much. It's just such a competitive advantage to them. And like you said, we're not going to be doing relegation. You're not going to convince the owners to come up with some second league and they're paying $6 billion for a franchise. But if they have one bad season, suddenly that valuation's cut in half. That's not happening. You're never convincing the owners to do that. I think there is a way to change around tanking in a way that limits the volume of teams. I think the issue right now is that we have so many teams that are tanking. You're always going to have your Nets, your Pacers in a gap year, the Warriors when they were in a gap year when everybody got hurt. That's always going to happen. To me, the issue more so right now is volume. And I think changing the pick protection so that the Jazz and Wizards aren't so hell-bent on keeping their top 8 pick, I think that kind of stuff is a good adjustment. And I think anything beyond that, you have to really be careful about how complicated you're making the formula. Like you mentioned, if there's a cutoff date of where wins now count towards the formula, whereas prior to that date, losses count towards the formula. But it definitely, I would argue this is as bad as tanking has ever been. We've got teams that are, it's trickled down to the coaches now. The coaches are trying to lose the basketball game. That can't be a thing. Will Hardy can't be thinking, hey, you know what? I'm not going to play our best players because that's better for us. Before it was kind of separated from the coaches. And to me, that's when I got the ultimate ick from tanking as a fan of a team that has been tanking for basically 2 full seasons now. Once we got to the point of, and the Raptors did this last year too, trying to sit our best players on purpose, that to me was okay, we used to kind of semi-ethically tank and now we have crossed the ultimate line here.
Yeah, at least I'll give the Jazz some credit that they're at least playing their guys. I know not playing them in the fourth quarter is something else, but at least they're out there. Even in that Heat game where they tried to lose because they didn't play Markkanen and Nurkic or Triple J in the fourth quarter, I was watching it, and Ace Bailey, it was a 1-point game or 2-point game late in the fourth quarter. It was a missed free throw, I think, and Ace Bailey's diving for the loose ball or it's a missed shot. And any normal coach, when it's that close in a game and has multiple timeouts, is running to the referee. He has immediate possession, call a timeout, and then instead just no timeout. He ends up having to get a jump ball. And it's okay, if you're a good coach, Will Hardy, which I think you are, and I think you know what to call there, you're going to call a timeout in that situation. Instead, it's you know what, we're going to let it play out. He's going to get a jump ball against Bam or Wiggins or whoever it was. And they, I think, ended up winning that jump ball. Either way, it's interesting what's going on. I remember a couple years ago, we crucified the Mavericks for tanking out of the play-in tournament when they got Derek Lively, which honestly was the right decision in hindsight. But we crucified them for tanking 2 to 3 games. We're now tanking, or we're talking about teams that have 30 games left this season. And it's just a lot of teams, which I get. It's a 3-player draft, and you're going to be probably happy with anybody in the top 3, maybe the top 4. So you want to increase your chances at getting a top pick. It's just like, I'm not faulting any teams for tanking. I get why you do it, especially if you're like a Jazz or Wizards and there's a small percent chance you have a wasted season and you don't get your pick. Like, you don't want that to happen. It's just like, what does the league maybe implement? If they even implement anything, maybe they just like say, you know what, it's part of the sport. It's part of the game. We don't really mind it, and nothing changes going forward. So it's just something to keep an eye on.
I'm at the point, though, where it's gotten so bad. I hope it gets worse. I hope we have teams like go ahead and shoot on the other team's basket for all I care, because we need to change the rules. Like, make it as egregiously as you possibly can. Just like completely impact the integrity of the game at this point, so that the league has to do something. Like let's have a back-to-back day where we have the Clippers tree planting scandal comes out, and then the next day they're like, you know what, this is how we're going to fix tanking. That's what I need in my life. I genuinely, if the Jazz come out tomorrow, or not tomorrow because there's no game, after the All-Star break, if they're shooting on the other team's basket, that'll be a positive, because I think at that point we'll actually get some rules changes.
I'm fascinated to see what ends up happening. And I'm fascinated to see if anything happens with the aspiration thing, like after the All-Star game, where now we don't have to have that like looming over for the All-Star break, or the All-Star game, which is in the Intuit Dome. So
Announce it at halftime. Announce at
right.
halftime of the East-West International Superstars Rising Challenge game, or whatever the hell it is.
Would make it the most entertaining All-Star game in years. So instead today we're going to talk about teams that are actually playing probably meaningful basketball. They're going to try to be winning as many games as possible, and they're going to at least have somewhat of a chance to win the NBA Finals. I think your chance increases a ton if you're in the Eastern Conference in a way, just because I think it's a little bit more of an even level playing field compared to the Western Conference, where it could be top heavy, but hey, you never know. We haven't seen a team go back-to-back since the 2017-2018 Warriors. Yes, the Thunder are probably in the best position to go back-to-back than we've seen, but we also said that about Boston, and I'm pretty sure everybody said that about Denver as well, and even Milwaukee back in 21. So we'll start off. We'll go just kind of back and forth. We'll talk about 10 teams total. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first. I want to see who your 10th rated contender is as we go down.
So you want to start at the lowest one and then go up.
Yeah. So like I guess that doesn't make sense in a draft context, but I guess tough. Like 10th on your board, I guess, which I guess is a little. We can go in the reverse order if you'd like to pick your number 1 contender. That might make a little bit more logical sense than drafting in reverse order.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
I think
go number 1.
We'll start with the favorite, which I think is everybody's favorite now. Yeah. You never know, but it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're first in net rating, first in defensive rating, they're 4th in offensive rating, and this is a team that was 42-13, or they're currently 42-13. They traded for Jared McCain at the trade deadline, not giving up a rotational player in that trade, just future draft capital. They've dealt with a ton of injuries this year. J-Dub's missed plenty of time. Chet's missed some time. Hartenstein, Caruso have missed plenty of time, and Shea is out with an abdomen injury right now, and they're still really competitive. They beat the Phoenix Suns by 27. I know Booker didn't play in that game, and the Suns were banged up, but they made light work of them. They beat the Lakers recently as well, and they almost beat the Houston Rockets over the weekend with no Shea. This team is extremely deep in terms of guards, in terms of wings. You could worry about their big man depth a little bit if Hartenstein is down or Chet is down as well, but we saw this team beat Memphis last year, Denver, and Minnesota in the Western Conference. There's a chance it could be an easier playing field. I think they kind of got unlucky a little bit having to play Denver in round number 2. I think as long as Denver doesn't free fall a little bit, I think their round 2 matchup will actually be a little bit favorable, or more favorable than last year for them. But they have a coach that just won it all. They have the reigning MVP who has an argument for the best player in the world right now. It's tough to really convince me on February 12th that there's anybody else that should be considered the favorite to win it all.
Yeah, I definitely would put OKC 1. I'm interested in your take. So obviously you mentioned their path being, easier, not easier. So they're going to finish as the 1 seed, I would assume. If you're them, like with the way the bracket would potentially work out, let's just say that there's a scenario which like the Spurs or the Nuggets end up on their side of the bracket. Who would you rather, if you're them, have on your side of the bracket, given their struggles against the Spurs this year, and then also obviously with how good the Nuggets are and how much they tested them last year?
It's tough because, the Spurs have had their number this year for the most part. Now, you think when we get into a playoff series and the Spurs don't have too much experience in the playoffs, I mean, when you're kind of looking through their roster, it's like Kelly Olynyk might play, probably not. And this was like a decade ago, his last meaningful playoff series. You have Luke Cornett and Harrison Barnes. And De'Aaron Fox has played in one playoff series in his career, but everybody else is kind of new to this whole thing. I think, to be honest, it's tough because who scares you more, Wemby or Jokic? And you're going to normally say Jokic, but if Wemby's going like it's tough I don't know, to pick Jokic over him. I think I'd rather play San Antonio still. I think in terms of OKC, you don't want to go up against three-point shooting teams or elite three-point shooting teams in a way that you got to worry about every single night, that you got to worry about Wemby getting double-teamed and kicking out. Now, the Spurs have some good three-point shooters on their team, but I believe they're also ranked, I think 17th right now, or they're 22nd, in three-point percentage this year. Fox, Castle, and Harper are all either inconsistent three-point shooters or not like guys you're worried about out there. It's not like they're Isaiah Joes of the world or even a current Shea where you could shoot over 40% from three. And I'm going to let Wemby beat me, or I'm going to let anybody else beat me, I should say. And we're going to double team Wemby. And I know it didn't work out in the regular season, but if the Thunder are at full strength, I think I'd still take San Antonio. Like, I'd rather play them. I'm just petrified of Denver, and I think they got better last year, and they almost beat OKC last year.
Yeah, it's just interesting because from a stylistic perspective, they both cause problems for Oklahoma City, whereas obviously Jokic causes problems for everyone. But as you mentioned, with their front court depth, he can cause an especially big issue for OKC. And just the way they guarded OKC last year as well, they played so much zone in that series. And at points, it was just an OKC offense that at times can be a little bit of a slog anyway. Was really, really an issue for them throughout the entire series. But then we've also just seen San Antonio this year with all of their guards, with their athleticism, are able to handle Oklahoma City's defense in a way that no other team in the league has been able to. I would agree with you. I would still rather play San Antonio than Denver for some reasons that we're going to talk about later. But I just think it's interesting when you think about them almost 100% going to be the one seed, and then maybe how the standings could potentially match up with a Denver team that seemingly someone else gets hurt every single night. They could run into that same scenario this year where they have to play them earlier in the playoffs than maybe you'd think. I also want to point out, like I said, I kind of have like a fun fact and extra fact for every single team. Everybody kind of gets upset about OKC in terms of their free throw rate and how many free throws they take and the flopping and da-da-da-da-da. It's interesting to me. I would have expected them to be higher. In terms of free throws per game, which obviously is impacted by pace and a variety of things, they're only 15th in the league in free throws per game. The Jazz, the Mavericks, the Pelicans are all ahead of them in terms of free throw attempts per game. And interestingly, a team that I feel like no one ever gets mad about free throw stuff is the LA Lakers, who have not finished outside of the top 5 in free throw attempts per game since the 21-22 season. Yet everybody gets mad about the Thunder in terms of flopping. There's something to be said for the Lakers play style. They had AD, they had LeBron for most of those seasons. And then obviously Luka this year, who's I think at one point was leading the league in free throw attempts this season, if he isn't already. But I just think it's interesting that continues to be a narrative when they are quite literally the definition of a league average free throw attempt team.
Yeah, right. And they're league average free throw attempts, and they're pretty much league average in three-point attempts as well. It's because sometimes you'll see a team be lower in free throw attempts if they're just taking a ton of threes and it's just the style of play. But no, they're actually taking just kind of league average three-point attempts. They're taking league average two-point attempts and league average free throw attempts.
Pretty much just Shea in terms of their free throw attempts. Like,
yeah, and definitely with J-Dub missing a ton of time this year as well. He's missed over 30 games or close to it this year because I think he's second, or no, Chet is a little bit ahead of J-Dub, is second on the team in free throws. It's fascinating to see what like their top 8 is going to be in a playoff series as well. I guess they can get to 9 in a way because you're going to talk about like obviously the big 3. I can't see them like benching Lou Dort. I mean, now if Lou Dort's not knocking down his threes, but we'll get there when we get there. Same with Cason Wallace and same with Alex Caruso. And then you can't really bench AJ Mitchell. So now we're going to have 4 other guards out there when Shea's going to play 40 minutes a night or 38 minutes a night in the playoffs. I do wonder if someone's going to be kind of the odd man out and they're just going to play the hot hand in a way because you might prioritize, like obviously Hartenstein's going to be out there, but would they prioritize Aaron Wiggins out there or Kenrich Williams or I don't know, like Jared McCain is just another like smaller guard opposite of Lou Dort in a way. He's out there for his three-point shooting, and hey, maybe if Dort's not knocking down his threes or Caruso, they're going to put in Jared McCain for one of those guys who you can kind of hide his defensive deficiencies in a way. I just like their depth a ton. If they do lose a Chet or a Hartenstein, I could see that being the demise for them just because I'm not really going to be fully on board with Jay Will,
Kenrich Williams.
And Kenrich Williams at the small ball 5. It's going to be tough, and I think we're going to just revert back to the 2024 Thunder where they were just getting demolished on the boards against like Gafford and Lively in that round 2 series. So they're definitely the one for me until proven otherwise. I don't think I've ever gone. I actually do remember the Nuggets were my preseason pick to win it all, but I didn't think they were going to be the 1 seed. I guess I should still stand by that. I don't think Denver's really proven me. I mean, they've hit a little bit of a weird slide since Jokic came back, but I still like Denver a ton. But until OKC, like, we get to the playoffs and I'm predicting who's going to win a series, it's hard not to say that they are the favorite right now, especially if the Spurs and the Nuggets are the 2 and 3 seed and they avoid both those teams until the conference finals. So we both are on board for OKC 1. Who do you like at number 2?
Really quickly, it's funny because you mentioned AJ Mitchell. Just see Zachary Richichet has been an injury replacement for the Rising Stars game as a result of AJ Mitchell missing the game.
Yeah, which is crazy. I saw what was it? It's like an underdog tweet or something, and it's like Zachary Richichet's. Did you see this? Mm-hmm. Where Zachary Richichet's projected the same amount of points as Shams in both their games this weekend. I'm like, my poor guy, Richichet.
No, definitely, though, I would still have OKC one. Worth noting. I think people just get a little bit bored sometimes because they're so good. They're fourth in offense, first in defense by a significant margin, first in net rating by a significant margin, while missing, what'd you say, 20-something games of Jalen Williams. Obviously, Shea's missed a couple of games. Chet's been relatively healthy, but there's always a random Hartenstein game. They're resting a bunch of guys, and it just doesn't matter. I would still put them in pole position, but I think they are closer in a playoff series to the rest of the group than they are in the regular season. They're such an efficient regular season team, and they're so deep, but I think those margins shrink a little bit in the postseason, but I would still pick them as my number one team. My number two contender here, if I'm going next in the draft, maybe slightly controversial. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets. I understand that, like you said, they're in a little bit of a slide. As of this recording, they are first in offense and 24th in defense, 8th in net rating. The year that they won the title, by the way, this is one of the reasons I'm not that worried about their slide, or really any slide that Denver ever has, assuming they can be healthy in the postseason. The year they won the title, they were 15th in defense. They were basically a 500 team for the last 20 games of the year. I think they were like 11-9 the last 20 games of the year, and they still ended up winning the title. And we've seen them do this before, like I said, with them winning a title. And the NBA record for the worst defensive rating by an NBA champion is actually the 2001 LA Lakers. They were 21st of 29 at the time teams in the league, still won the title. Second on that list is the Denver Nuggets, who were 15th in defensive rating and still ended up winning the title. So that 24th number is scary. They are by far, like most of these teams, if not all of them, are top 10 or very close on both sides of the ball in overall offensive and defensive rating. So that is definitely the biggest sliding scale that we have in the wrong direction, but I still would pick them in a postseason series.
Yeah, I would too. They're 17-6 this year where Aaron Gordon plays, and obviously their defense, he's arguably their best defender out there 100%. I'm not worried about their offense now. It's been kind of some weird crunch time windups as of late. I think Jokic has been a little bit too passive. Him and Murray have kind of been going back and forth on who to rely, because when Jokic was out, this was Murray's team offensively. He was the guy getting every single possession, every single shot in crunch time, and now Jokic is back. I think there's a little bit of like a hot dog, like passing it back and forth, or hot potato, I should say, not hot dog mentality, where they're just kind of, we don't know who should take the final shot at this point, and that's something Coach Adelman's going to have to figure out throughout the rest of the season. I just love their depth way more than I did last year, and I think that was also the demise of the Nuggets, where we saw like 4 healthy guys for this team in a playoff series. They had to ask like Julian Strawther, who was not playing, to come off the bench and give them like a good half. Michael Porter Jr. was shooting with one shoulder, and then he ends up getting traded in the offseason. So they've had their fair share of injuries this year. I think Peyton Watson's improvement. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. as a signing, Jonas Valanciunas as a backup, and even just like Spencer Jones coming out of nowhere. Like I don't mind Bruce Brown getting 8 minutes a night in a playoff series if he can knock down his threes. And I feel like we've seen the worst of Christian Brown so far, and hopefully that this is like rock bottom for him this season. He continues to get better. He's also missed a ton of time going forward. So if they could be healthy for the playoffs, and we're going to say that about every team, I really do like their chances a ton to still beat OKC. I wonder what like the betting line, and obviously we're so far from them, like who would be the favorite? I'd assume it's OKC, but this team, if they're fully healthy, I just think it's tough to think they're not the second best team in the NBA, and maybe the best team to go up against the Oklahoma City Thunder 100%. It's just, will Gordon's hamstring hold up? It's something that, what was it, game 6, end of game 6, he got hurt in last year. He played on it in game 7, but it didn't work out whatsoever. Peyton Watson is dealing with a hamstring injury, which is going to roll him out till basically March at the earliest. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think they have all the talent in the world to win it all, and we'll see if they can put it together.
Yeah, the depth part is interesting because I just like so many more of their options this year than they did last year. At times, it's almost like they have too many guys. It's like, who's going to finish the game? Or is there going to be a scenario where if everybody's healthy, Peyton Watson's playing really well and Christian Brown's just like chilling on the bench, because Peyton Watson's playing well and they want Tim Hardaway out there for shooting, and then Gordon, Jokic, and Murray. Obviously, Cam Johnson in that equation as well. I also just like the fact that last year at points in the Thunder series, they were playing like 6 guys, and they were playing zone because that's what they had to do. If they're playing OKC, honestly, even San Antonio, I could see a scenario where they play zone and they play JV and Jokic together, and they're just trying to kill you on the glass. I could definitely see that as a scenario. Like you said, Bruce Brown as hey, we need you to play like semi-point guard for 4 minutes because Jokic has 3 fouls and Jamal Murray's exhausted. Okay, cool, we can do that. I just like their options so much better, and the reason I said maybe it's slightly controversial to have them as second overall is because of the defensive issues and, like you said, just random inconsistent stretches. But if there's a single team in the league that I'm going to just kind of wave that away and ignore it. It's Denver, A, because of Jokic, and B, because we've seen them in the past have some of those stretches and then ultimately end up winning the title anyway. If they were in a playoff series tomorrow and both teams were fully 100% healthy, I think OKC would be a slight favorite. But again, the gap between OKC and everyone else, it just shrinks for me in a postseason series, because even a team that won the title last year was obviously very good, needed a couple of 7-game series to do it. And by their own admission, they didn't play as well as they thought they should have in the postseason last year. So I would put Denver there. And frankly, I think those two teams are kind of in their own tier. Like if you want to give like a 4 or 5 team tier 1, that's fine. But if you want to go like tier 1A, I think it's OKC and Denver, and then maybe a tiny tier gap beyond them.
Yeah, it just sucks that we're not going to see this team, like, I think, have a 20-game sample size at full strength towards the end of the year. Like, because Gordon, he's run off 4 to 6 weeks in the end of January, so that's at least, like, mid-March in a way that he's probably going to come back realistically. Same with Peyton Watson, and it's just like Cam Johnson got hurt in the beginning of the year. Yep. Brown's health as well. I just want to see this team at full strength because I love their depth. And Bruce Brown goes from the 7th guy, 8th guy to like the 11th guy or 10th guy. And I feel so comfortable about that in a playoff series for this team. So I don't disagree. Their defensive numbers this year, a little alarming in a way. And maybe that's also going to be their demise going forward. But I don't disagree at number 2. Now, I was going to say, I love that you end up with this pick because I'm presuming we're going East here unless you're staying with the Spurs. And so I like the position that we put you in here to pick an East team with the third overall pick. So if I'm saying the third best team in the NBA, I'm probably going the San Antonio Spurs in a way. But when you're talking, they're not going to be my pick because when you're talking about teams that can actually contend, San Antonio's got to go through the aforementioned Thunder and Nuggets. The Eastern Conference team doesn't. And just don't want to sound biased, so I'm not going to say the Knicks. I'm going to say the Detroit Pistons are coming.
Say whatever you think, whatever you believe. You don't have to change your opinion.
I'm going to take Detroit.
Whatever you think is right.
I'm going to take Detroit at number 3, and I'm worried about their offense in the playoffs. That's like one thing that I could worry about outside of Cade Cunningham, because say Cade Cunningham is having an off shooting night, say he's in foul trouble, say there's some like lingering injury issue or something. He's dealt with the wrist injury this year. He seems like he's at full strength now. I'm not really trusting Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, any of those guys to create a shot who are maybe their 3 most, Thompson and Duren are their 2 most important players outside of Cade. I think it's a big S for Dennis Jenkins, just getting off a 2-way contract to show up in a playoff series. And then it's Tobias Harris. And Tobias Harris is a good player. He's been a good Piston. But as a number 2 in the Eastern Conference Finals, it scares me a little bit. Their defense is amazing. Their defense is going to make your life a living hell. It was uncomfortable for the Knicks last year in the playoffs, where all 6 of those games are pretty close in a way. So I think Detroit has a very high floor, probably the highest floor out of any team here in the Eastern Conference. I would be shocked if they lost in round number 2, depending on the opponent. Maybe Cleveland matches up really well against them. Maybe it's Boston. Maybe it's New York. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised if they lost in round 2. I think, honestly, if you told a Pistons fan before the year you win a playoff series this year, but you lose in round 2, I think they would take that. I think they would view that as a step in the right direction after losing in round 1 last year. It's just I'm a little worried about their offensive game planning in the playoffs when the game slows down a little bit and teams will double team Cade. And Cade has also dealt with some 3-point shooting issues this year as well. So the Pistons can knock down threes, but if they're not knocking down threes, man, it's a little scary going forward for this team. And they're going to have to rely a lot on Duncan Robinson. I know they don't want to play Karis LeVert in a playoff series this year. I mean, they're ranked 28th in 3-pointers made this season, 21st in 3-point percentage. That's a little scary in the playoffs. So would you have gone Detroit here at number 3? If so, yeah.
I had Detroit at 3. I went back and forth on a little bit, but they've just been so good in the regular season. Before we get to the actual basketball part, some non-basketball thoughts. You know how like NFL coaches sometimes, like Sean McVay will have like the get back guy, like the strength guy that's like 5'9", 250 is like holding back Sean McVay. We need that for Isaiah Stewart, and we need that for Ron Holland, because otherwise like the 10th and 11th guy on the Pistons is going to be playing meaningful minutes, because they're going to be either that or like a seatbelt. We need something, because you can't leave the bench. Like you're going to miss maybe the entire series if you're Isaiah Stewart if you leave the bench. That can't happen. Also, in theory, because like you're saying, if they were to lose in the second round, it would be with the way the standings are now, it would be to Cleveland or Orlando or Philly. I don't imagine that happening. So presumably we'd be looking at Knicks Pistons in the conference finals. I think we probably have to, like, whatever the betting odds come out as, it has to be like, we have to score it like a boxing match, because there's going to be a minimum of 2 fights a game. Like, it's gonna, like, the security in Madison Square Garden is going to be like surrounding the arena. It's going to be like when you see those EuroLeague games and there's like fire in the stands. That's what it's going to look like when these two teams play in the playoffs. I do share some of your concerns with their offense. They're 11th in offense, second in defense, second in overall net rating, which even though their record is really good, I'm not sure people would guess off the top of their head that the Pistons are second in net rating on the season. More concerningly for me than just their offensive rating, they are 28th in threes made and attempted. And although there have been some recent teams that have kind of bucked that trend over the last 5 or 6 years, typically, if you are not a top 10, top 12 three-point attempt team, you really, really struggle in the postseason. You certainly struggle to win it all. So that is definitely a concern there. I also am a little worried. I don't know. This number wasn't as high as I thought it would be in my head, but I'm a little worried about the over-reliance on Cade just overall in terms of, usage rate, usage percentage. His usage rate this season is actually 33.6, which seems like a lot, but somehow is not even in the top 70 of single seasons in the history of the NBA. That doesn't seem right, but it is. I looked it up earlier today. I didn't prep you for this. Quick question. Can you name the top 5 highest usage percentage seasons in the history of the league? All of these are in this century, so we don't have to go too far back.
There's no repeats.
There's no repeat.
Okay, I might get some of the years off, but is it like 2016, 17, or 18 James Harden Rockets in there?
18, 19 Harden is 2.
Okay, 18, 19 Harden's 2. Who else had like an insane usage this century? Because I don't think it's like any of the LeBron years. I don't think there's going to be a Kevin Durant year.
Nope.
I'll go 2022 Steph Curry.
Nope.
Okay.
There's one very obvious name, and he's the repeat. I think you're just overthinking it.
And he's the Okay, can I guess? I don't think this is the one you're thinking of, but 2001 Allen Iverson?
Nope. But he was pretty high on the list. But
okay. Why am I overthinking it? 2025 Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
No. So I'll go ahead and tell you, just because I didn't prep you for it. Number 1 on the list is Russell Westbrook, 2016-17.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
41.65.
Dumb.
41.65% usage rate for Russ. Harden, 2018-19 is second. Giannis, 22-23. Kobe, 05-06. And then Russ, 14-15 is 38.37.
I would have gotten some of those. The Russ one hurts, not getting the Russ.
The Giannis one did catch me a little bit by surprise. Harden, Russ, obviously, and then Kobe probably just wouldn't have been front of mind because all of these other than Kobe are 14 and more recent. But anyway, just to put into context a little bit, it feels like Cade has the ball a lot, and he does, but it's not like a historic, Luka level 37% usage rate, who right now leads the league this season, by the way.
Yeah, no. So it's going to be something that's going to be interesting to follow, as we both mentioned. 3-point shooting, secondary shot creation for this team. I'm looking at the Eastern Conference Finals odds right now, and it's like, or who wins the Eastern Conference. It is insane that the Cavs, Pistons, Celtics, and Knicks are all, I don't even know what the betting terminology would be, plus 10 off each other. It's plus 330, plus 340, plus 350, plus 360. I don't think I've ever seen that before from a conference champion. Usually it's like 1 or 2 teams that are like the Thunder are minus 150, and then it's a big drop off, Nuggets plus 370, and then it's a bigger drop off, Spurs plus 800. It's kind of just like a coin flip right now to pick the Eastern Conference winner. I'm surprised that Cleveland's number 1. I've just been fooled by this team with Donovan Mitchell so many times throughout the regular season, and I just don't know if I could see James Harden making it to an NBA Finals at one point. But we'll definitely get to the Cavs. We both agreed on Detroit here at number 3. So at number 4, are we going back to the West, or are you staying in the East?
I'm staying in the Eastern Conference at 4th, and I have a reason, by the way, for why the Spurs aren't here, which we'll talk about when we get there. I have the New York Knicks 4th on my power rankings for contenders. They are 3rd in offense, 10th in defense, and 4th in net rating. Another trivia question for you. However, this is Knicks related, so I think you'll probably fare a little bit better. Do you know which team set the single season record for made threes by the New York Knicks? Do you know what season that was off the top of your head?
I would go 22. I just know I think Dante DiVincenzo hit.
What were you?
I was going to say 2024 because DiVincenzo hit the most threes for a Knick that year.
So by a team, it was the 2012-13, the J.R. Smith,
oh my God, I was never getting that with Jason Kidd and Pablo Prigioni and those guys.
So they made 891 threes at the time. That was a single season NBA record. They made 891 threes.
I guess I should know that.
This season's Knicks are 4th in the league in made threes through 55 games, and they've made 827, and we have 20-something games left.
Oh my God.
So just in terms, it's the best 3-point shooting team in the history of the New York Knicks, and for a team that in the Tibbs era maybe wasn't considered an offensive juggernaut. It's interesting in the first season of Mike Brown, they're getting a bunch of corner threes, and they are a handful of games away from breaking what at the time was an NBA record, and obviously is the current Knicks record that they will break very soon.
I don't know if it's era adjusted, but the Knicks have hit over 1,000 threes the last 2 years.
Well, sorry. So it's not the Knicks record anymore. At the time, it was an NBA record, and they are going to break. Okay. They are going to break that within 60 games.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a Knicks record for a time. Yeah, that is insane. Going forward, I mean, I'm surprised that the Knicks are now ranked 10th defensively in defensive rating. It doesn't feel like that when you're watching them, but they did have a really nice stretch where to the help of your Nets, they scored 70 points one game, 5 points in the fourth quarter.
Big loss to the Pacers yesterday.
And then they lose to the Pacers, and then they blow out the Sixers by 49 yesterday. That Pacers loss was so bad. It was. I know OG and Mitch.
I was talking about the Nets. The Nets lost to the Pacers.
Yeah, no, they lost to the Pacers. I mean, the Nets, who they beat recently, it wasn't the Jazz,
Kings.
right?
They beat the Kings. I think. Or no, it was the Jazz. Yeah, the Jazz. And they beat the Wizards when somehow the Wizards were up 100. It's been bad lately. I don't know why they've played all of the tanking, semi-tanking.
Right, all in a row.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be drafting the Nets today, but the Knicks.
I think they are genuinely the worst non-Sacramento team in the league, but that's the other funny thing.
Hey, no one's looking better.
That's the funny thing about all the tanking stuff is we've got teams that are sitting all-stars, sitting all these guys, and none of them can out-tank the Kings, who were genuinely trying to be a good basketball team this year and didn't trade any of their good players at the deadline, and they still can't catch. The Kings are pretty much locked into. They'd have to win 4 games at some point the rest of the year to not have the worst odds, and I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so interesting the second half on how many teams are really just going to completely try to sell every single game because we're already at that point. But the Knicks, what gives me a little bit of hope about the Knicks compared to last year is that I think their bench is a lot better. So Miles McBride is going to be out for probably the rest of the regular season. There is, I guess, optimism that he's going to be back for the playoffs. They acquire Jose Alvarado for Gershon Yabusele. I mean, it has looked very good so far. Yeah, Alvarado has looked very good. He played good in his first game against the Celtics on Super Bowl Sunday, and he looked really good yesterday against the Sixers. I think he hit the most threes in his career in a game. He hit 8 or something. Mitchell Robinson is one of the more important backup bigs in the league and maybe one of the more important bench players in this league. The Knicks maybe still lack another wing, but they can stagger Josh Hart's minutes in the playoffs and McCallum and Anunoby. And I don't think Mike Brown is probably going to trust Mohamed Diawara, but he's been a good 3-and-D piece for them as of late. And Jordan Clarkson has kind of fallen out of the rotation. They have Landry Shamet. This Knicks bench is deeper than it's been in the past. And I could totally see the reason for the Knicks over the Pistons. It just kind of goes back to where I was last year, where the Knicks went 0-5 against the Cavs and the Celtics in the regular season because they didn't beat the Thunder, Cavs, or Celtics in the regular season, and then they end up beating the Celtics in round number 2. So that could happen again. The Knicks have been blown out twice this year by the Pistons. It's been probably the 2 most embarrassing games played by the Knicks this year have both been against the Pistons. I believe, both of them have been in Detroit so far, so I think they play one more game at the Garden. We'll see how that looks going forward. You can make an argument between the Knicks and the Pistons. The Pistons will have the best player in a playoff series, but you can honestly change your mind on that with Brunson in a playoff series where he's been statistically a top 2-3 player in the playoffs over the last 3 seasons. It's just will they be able to maximize this offense with Karl Anthony Towns? Will Cat be able to be fine enough defensively, stay out of dumb foul trouble, and be able to be the elite floor spacer that he can be? Will the Knicks' health hold up? Because it held up last year for the most part. It's been kind of teetering a little bit this year. A lot of guys have missed time, not a decent chunk outside of Miles McBride right now. Where Brunson's missed some time, Hart's missed some time, OG's definitely missed some time, and you're always concerned with him. But I don't know. It's so hard for me sometimes to kind of change my philosophy on the Knicks where I don't want to just sound too optimistic in my head because I thought they were going to beat Indiana last year and they lost in 6.
It's such an interesting matchup, too, if we're just kind of jumping ahead to, let's say, the Pistons and Knicks play each other in the playoffs because obviously, I mean, you said it yourself, you're surprised they're 10th in defense. The Cat Brunson thing is a continual issue for them. But I'm not that worried about their personnel defensively against Detroit because even though obviously Duren and Cade are really good, there's ways in which they can kind of deal with that because they have these wings and they can, switch Bridges onto Cade. And Brunson on Cade is a nightmare, but that's not the matchup you're going to get unless you just give away a switch all the time. And obviously that can create issues rotation-wise. But I'm not that concerned, weirdly, about their defensive personnel because the the Pistons attack is so centered on really one guy, and then obviously Duren is the role guy as well. Whereas if you had to play, I think like Boston historically has been a tough matchup for them, where two of the wings have to be dedicated to these two guys, then it becomes really difficult to guard when you have Cat and Brunson out there. So I think weirdly, even though I have Detroit slightly higher than the Knicks in these rankings, I think I would lean, I mean, depending on what the odds would be, I think I would lean the Knicks in a playoff series just because it feels a little early for Detroit. They've been really good in the regular season, but I just feel like they're so heavily concentrated on what Cade does. Whereas weirdly, I think the Knicks are a little bit more spread out in terms of who they rely on. But I still would have to rank the Pistons higher. It's just in that matchup specifically, I think the Knicks have a little bit of an edge in terms of spacing, obviously, and just in terms of the way they match up personnel-wise. Like they could play Hart and OG and Bridges, and any of those three guys can guard Cade reasonably well. I think Hart would have the hardest time because of the size difference, but I think there's ways to hide Brunson and Cat on certain guys, assuming you can still rebound the ball, which the Knicks have been a good rebounding team this year. Oddly, they weren't that good of a defensive rebounding team under Tibbs, but they've been pretty good this year. And as long as like Ron Holland and Asar Thompson aren't killing Jalen Brunson on the offensive glass, I think there's ways to hide him, which is by far the biggest issue that the Knicks would have in any postseason series. And I think one of the reasons why Indiana was so difficult for them was because of how it wasn't just focused on one guy, and Cat and Brunson were running around like with their heads cut off trying to guard and rotate. So
yeah, so I mean, it's now or never for this Knicks team with no Halliburton. Who knows if Jason Tatum's going to play this year? But either way, the Knicks probably have their best odds to win the finals, maybe with this core that we will ever see kind of going forward. So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up. Will they get the 2 seed? I don't think any team's going to pass Detroit. It is possible. I think I read a stat that the Cavs play the most amount of like tanking teams, which is just like all the non-playing teams. So there's a chance Cleveland can go on a run. We'll talk about them at one point. But to recap, we went Thunder, Nuggets, Pistons, Knicks, and then I'll be back on the clock here at number 5.
Briefly before we move on for the Knicks, who amongst the, like if we go beyond the like Cavs, Magic, Sixers territory in the standings, let's say the Knicks are the 2 seed, who amongst the rest of the group are you most scared to play in a first round series? So like Miami, Chicago, Charlotte, who amongst that back end group are you like, I didn't really want to play those guys, whether it be because like, we might lose, or more likely, it's a 6-game series and that sucks because we got to go and play, Cleveland in round 2 or whatever. What team would you be most nervous to play?
We can classify Orlando in that tier.
Sure. If you want to put Orlando there, or you can make them and the Sixers the cutoff, and then beyond that would be like, Chicago, Miami, Charlotte.
Probably Charlotte over Miami. I'm not really too scared of Miami in the playoffs.
Okay.
I just don't think their backcourt defense is going to hold up, and I kind of worry about like their consistency. If you want to just say all the playing teams right now, so no like Cleveland, Toronto, Philly, Charlotte could definitely have a run for that, but I would probably say Orlando. I think the Knicks would beat Orlando in a playoff series. It's just like Orlando plays super physical, and they kind of had the Knicks number at one point. They've looked so inconsistent though with Paolo this year and Franz on the floor at the same time, or at least as of late. So I would probably say Orlando just because I think it could be similar to what like Orlando did to Boston last year, and they're just going to play so physical and so hard and kind of just wear the Knicks down a little bit.
It was a bit of a leading question because I think Charlotte's the answer, and I wanted you to like be a little bit like, I'm not really sure I'd want to play Charlotte, but I think Orlando, even if it's not from a like we might lose the series perspective, but like a 2 of our wings are going to have a hamstring strain perspective, I think it's definitely Orlando.
Yeah, they've been better over the last 6 weeks. I would be fine playing Charlotte in round 1. I think the Knicks would win. I would be like I'm high on Charlotte, but I don't know if we're going to draft them today. You never know, though. We'll see going forward. So I'll pick number 5 here. I'm going to go back to the Western Conference. I'll talk about the Spurs. I think you can make an argument that the Spurs are the 3rd best team in the NBA. I mentioned that earlier. It's just when you're talking about the Western Conference, it's tough to have them any higher than number 2. I could see the reasoning for them above Denver. Hey, if you want to have them at number 1 because they've had OKC's number, fine. It's just like this is going to be Wemby's first playoff series. I worry about this team's health a little bit at the moment, but I think they have a very interesting, I guess, like team lineup allocation where you have all these guards that are so quick and so athletic and have really good first steps and can attack closeouts and can drive to the basket. And now Wemby, if he's knocking down his jumpers, he's going to be the most effective player in any playoff series, maybe no matter who they're playing right now. This year, though, they're ranked 22nd in threes, and I think that's something that you can keep an eye on in the playoffs as well. They are currently 5th in net rating, 3rd in defensive rating, and 8th in offensive rating. This would be Mitch Johnson's first career playoff series that he would be coaching in as well. We'd see how he would work with adjustments moving forward. They're just, I think, like a super volatile team in the playoffs. Like if you told me the Spurs were a first round exit, I could see it. If you told me they're in the NBA Finals, I think I could squint and see it as well. I think they have a wide range of where they can end up this April, May, and June. So I think I would take the Spurs. I don't know if I would take them over the Knicks and the Pistons in a playoff series. It's just hypothetical. I doubt that's a final matchup we actually get. But I don't think I could have had the Spurs any lower than here at number 5.
It's interesting, by the way, we did not compare lists beforehand, and we have the exact same top 5 in the exact same order. But I agree that amongst the 5 teams we've talked about, and this to me is the actual tier break, like these are the tier 1 teams, and then we kind of have a little bit of a break, I think, beyond this. But amongst those top 5 teams, the Spurs definitely have the widest range of outcomes. Like I would be shocked if any of the other 4 teams lose in the first round. I would be surprised if the Spurs lost in the first round, but I wouldn't be shocked. And 8th in offense, 3rd in defense, 5th in net rating. It's a little hard to kind of judge them fully because they have had, Fox missed the beginning of the year and then Wemby missed some time. I think that's my number one concern and the reason that almost even regardless of the conference situation, I would put San Antonio 5th just because even though Wemby's only missed time twice this year, 2 different sections, I'm just constantly worried about health, calf strain, all that, and also how much they're actually going to lean on him in a playoff game. Like 30 minutes of Wemby is amazing, but most other teams are not playing their best guy 30 minutes, and I'm just worried that might kind of limit how good they've been, although they have still been really good when Wemby hasn't played. It's just interesting because I feel like the Spurs are always kind of in like the collective conscience of NBA fans, and now obviously they're coming back up, but they have missed the playoffs for 6 straight years, which doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like they've been at the bottom for that long. And prior to that streak, they'd missed the playoffs a total of 5 times in the history of the franchise, which started in 1967. So this current streak, which obviously they're going to make the playoffs this year and break the streak, was longer than the total number of missed playoffs in the history of the franchise, which, like I said, lasts, 60 years basically at this point. Is crazy.
It's insane because, even like the posts like Duncan and after they traded away Kawhi, they never decided to fully bottom out in a way because DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge just elevated the floor, and they still had Derek White and DeJounte Murray at the time as well. And hey, they bottomed out at the right time in 23, basically fully bottoming out and winning maybe the greatest lottery sweepstakes that you could have asked for since LeBron James. So like you said, we had the same top 5. I think it's going to get a little bit more. We'll see a little bit more variance between both of us in the back half of this, just because I think it's now. You're not throwing a dart at a dartboard, but these teams now have maybe a lower chance. I mean, maybe the Western Conference teams have a lower chance. I don't think the odds and even the Vegas odds will reflect that there's 4 Eastern Conference teams that have roughly a similar chance. Right. It's just yes, I'm trying to predict maybe the Cavs with Harden and how they'll look in a playoff series, and I'm more excited about them than maybe I was with Garland for the 2026 playoffs. And Who knows, maybe Tatum comes back. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I think it has to be a good thing. But are we going to ask Jason Tatum to play 36 minutes in a playoff series against the Detroit Pistons? That's a freaking lot off somebody off a torn Achilles in under a year. It's crazy too because Tatum might come back before DeJounte Murray, and I don't know their specifics of the surgeries because I think there was a thing with Tatum surgery that it was a more aggressive surgery which can push you back quicker. And maybe they were a little bit more patient with DeJounte Murray, but Murray tore his Achilles I think in January of 25, and there's no really timetable for his return. Now there isn't with Tatum, but he's practicing with the main Celtics, and Tatum tore his at the end of May or something. So it's interesting.
Well, it's just also crazy. Obviously circumstances are different, but Tatum tore his Achilles a significant amount of time after Kyrie tore his ACL, and Tatum is very likely going to play before Kyrie does. And obviously it's different because Dallas probably doesn't want Kyrie to play, and Kyrie's always been very conservative on when he comes back from injury. But it's just interesting. Speaking of Boston, by the way, if we're going to go ahead and go to the 6 team, unless you have more Spurs stuff.
No, I'm good. Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to see who you have at 6.
At 6, like I said, bit of a tier break here. These are my tier 2 contenders. Does have something to do with the conference stuff. I would put Boston here at number 6. They are 2nd in offense, 8th in defense, 3rd in net rating. Obviously, we are waiting on the Tatum return. I know I read some stuff the other day that his return at this point is more so focused on the mental aspect of things than it is physically. Physically, he could play in an NBA game tomorrow. Mentally, there's obviously still a lot of hurdles with someone that, to my knowledge, has never really suffered a significant injury at all, whether it be college, high school, or otherwise, international play, and then now obviously coming back from the Achilles. And not to mention a Boston team that's playing really, really well. This Celtics team actually without Tatum have a slightly, and I mean like 0.1 slightly better offensive rating than last year's team that won 61 games, which is kind of wild to think about. Obviously defensively, they're significantly worse. But when you're trading, all of the shooting, formerly Anthony Simon, some other guys that they have, it's not a surprise necessarily. Their offense has been slightly better. Jaylen Brown's been unbelievable. Obviously, we are assuming that if Tatum comes back, that is a net positive, but maybe there's an argument to be made that because of how well Brown and some of these other guys are playing, it would be more worth it to just let Tatum sit. But I'm assuming in this ranking that Tatum is going to play, 20, 25 minutes or something in playoff games, and that is going to be a net positive for them. So that puts them slightly above the kind of random grouping of Western Conference teams that we'll talk about after them.
Yeah, it's insanely impressive that they're 35-19 and third in net rating and second offensive rating with no Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Honestly, with the games played situation going on with Shea and Jokic and all these guys, Jaylen Brown or even Cade Cunningham
100%.
before could win MVP, which is insane. It would be wild if Jaylen Brown won an MVP award before Jason Tatum.
And Finals MVP, right?
Yeah, he won 24 Finals MVP.
I can't remember because they did the East. That was the year they started the conference final MVP, and so I get mixed up in my head who won what, but.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Brown won the 24 finals or conference finals MVP. I forget if they retroactively gave it to Tatum for 2022. Because I think if you look up Tatum's name on Basketball Reference, he's the 2022 Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So they technically both have one under their belt right now. It's just wild to see what Missoula's gone out of this team. And I think they're another team built for the playoff series. Now, if the Celtics are hitting their threes, good luck. You're not going to be able to keep up with them. But if they're not hitting their threes like they were against the Knicks last year, they're definitely vulnerable in a playoff series going forward. And you're going to just try to, even if you try to match up Hunt like Peyton Pritchard, he could hold his own defensively. And not having Tatum as a help defender in a playoff series will hurt. And you don't have Porzingis anchoring the paint. Either way, though, it's going to be very tough to beat the Boston Celtics in a 7-game series, even without Jason Tatum. It's hard to think about the game flow and how does Jaylen Brown feel about being a number 2. Right. I feel like if Tatum comes back this year, though, I think Tatum's a professional enough where he would realize this is Jaylen Brown's season, and you don't want to disrupt that flow. And I think I forgot if you said that with the mental aspect, where you also don't want to disrupt the flow of the team. Right. Now everything's been going. So yeah, it came down between probably them or Cleveland here. I might have given the slight edge to Cleveland because I just think there's a whole unknown with Jason Tatum, and if I'm going to take one of these teams to hit its ceiling this year, I think it might be Cleveland. Even though I just said I don't want to Donovan Mitchell's yet to make it to a conference finals. James Harden's hasn't made it to an NBA Finals since 2012. So it's been a minute. I would probably go Cleveland and then Boston, but it's kind of splitting hairs for those two teams at this point.
We'll talk about Cleveland later because I don't have them next and I don't have them after that either. But
okay.
We'll talk about them when we get to them. But it is interesting, like you said, even though he didn't play a lot for Team USA in the most recent Olympics, I feel like a Tatum return would almost be like a Team USA version of Tatum, where it's create a little bit, guard a little bit, make some threes, but Jaylen Brown's going to have the ball a bunch, and then you're just going to kind of be over there. And I think that's just such an interesting dynamic to have a guy be reinserted into when he's used to, even when they were playing together, Tatum was still the guy above Jaylen Brown, like you said, him being the second option. But for the health of the team and the way they've been playing, I feel like Tatum would have to be much more deferential, not to the extent of being super, super passive, but his role would just be significantly different. And so I could see a scenario where they decide it's not worth it. But given that, like you said, he's already playing 5-on-5 stuff and they are as good as they are, I'm expecting him to return. And that does kind of boost Boston up for me a little bit. Also, one other note on the Celtics for people like you and I, who their NBA teams historically have not had a ginormous amount of success, at least on a consistent basis. Celtics are really good this year. It's crazy. They lost a bunch of guys from last year. They've won, like you said, 35 games by winning percentage. This is the 35th best Celtics team of all time. They've played 80 total seasons, and it is a slightly above average Celtics team in the history of the franchise. Now, granted, this goes back to when there's 8 teams in the league, and Bill Russell's winning 9 of 11, championships or whatever. But still, 35th best Celtics team in the history of the franchise, and they're basically the 2 seed in the conference. So that's just kind of annoying, frankly, as a fan of a team that has historically not been very good and very consistent. This is just, it's kind of like the Pats making the Super Bowl. It's it's cool. This is our 12th Super Bowl in 25 years. It's fine.
Such a successful franchise. It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, and it's kind of like the Pats too, because they were like pretty bad in like the late 90s, the Celtics, and maybe even the early 2000s. And now we're just catching them in like this, not a dynastic run, but it's close to it. It feels like, at least in the East, if you're talking about like an Eastern Conference dynasty, they're basically an East
wouldn't
dynasty.
it be, if they made the conference finals, wouldn't it be like Brown and Tatum's like 8th or 9th conference finals or something? Isn't it something crazy like that? I don't know.
Yeah, and I checked this during the playoffs last year, so maybe it's off, but I'm pretty sure Tatum and Brown, like, how old are they? Brown is, I think, a year older. Brown is 29. So if you look at like playoff wins by a 29-year-old, Jaylen Brown's like, it's only like Kobe Bryant and like Magic Johnson like ahead of him, and same with Jason Tatum and like some of the older Lakers. It's insane how successful they've been.
16 and 17 draft, right? So this is like the 10th year for Brown and the 9th year for Tatum.
It's insane how much success they've had so far, and honestly, I don't see that success going anywhere anytime soon. So you said whenever we talk about them next, I'm going to bring up Cleveland next. So I don't think Cleveland is the next best team here. I think like Minnesota's a better team. I could see Houston being a better team, even though they're sliding a little bit. But I think when you're looking at how easy it is to maybe get out of your conference in the East and how wide open it is, I'm taking Cavs, which would be 7th on our list. Cleveland, edge James Harden, who elevates, I think, their floor this year. You could say he elevates their ceiling in a way as well, but I think it's just tough to really put that faith in James Harden in a playoff series. And you still have two more negative defenders in your backcourt in Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. Now, what I love about Cleveland this year is still their depth. I mean, last year, their depth was great. This year, I don't think their depth has changed too much. You lose a wing in Hunter, but you're going to have Schroeder, Keon Ellis going forward. I think Jalen Tyson is kind of like a DeAndre Hunter replacement in a way, given how good he's looked in year number 2. They obviously felt the loss of Ty Jerome, but honestly, when you have James Harden and Donovan Mitchell playing 35 minutes a night in the playoffs, it's not the end of the world, or they might even play more than that. It's not the end of the world to not have like a great lead ball handler off the bench. You want to kind of have the backup wing minutes and the backup big minutes when Allen is maybe getting outplayed, and you need more of an athletic big man. And they've gotten a lot out of DeQuan Tomlin this year defensively. Not sure if Atkinson's really going to trust him in a playoff series, but this team has played 20 different guys this year. They've been through ups and downs. We called it a disappointing year because they won 64 games last year. I think their over-under was like high 50s this year. It was 56.5. So they are 34-21, but they're only a few games out of the 2 seed. They've won 5 in a row leading up to the All-Star break. They're 3-0 with the James Harden team, with clearly their best win against Denver because they barely beat they beat Washington and
teams. Yeah,
beat Washington and Sacramento. So I'm not like saying that they're legit, but the Denver win was a nice win for sure on the road, and Harden hits that step back 3 to tie it. So I just think they expand their ceiling a little bit with Harden. I trust Harden's health more than I trust Darius Garland's health, who's been hurt either in the regular season or the playoffs over the last few years. Mobley's health will be a big X factor for this team. I don't know. I think I would maybe have them, like I said, higher than Boston, but I would have either Boston or Cleveland definitely behind New York and Detroit.
That's what I was going to ask. So your 6th team, if you were on the clock, you would have picked Cleveland? That would be our – okay, because I had Boston 6 and I had the Cavs 9th. So obviously they're playing well. Harden's playing well. Like we mentioned, 2 of the games basically don't count because they're playing Washington and Sacramento. The win at Denver is huge. And I said at the time, even though I hated the Garland trade, they're a better basketball team with James Harden. He's available, which is a significant part of why they're better. Obviously, all of my concerns are in the postseason. They could win every game the rest of the year, and it doesn't really change my mind on how much they're relying on James Harden to save really the Donovan Mitchell era in Cleveland potentially. But 5th in offense, 13th in defense, like you said. Expectation-wise, they were really disappointing in the beginning of the year. But by the end of the season, it's not crazy to think they could still be a 50-win team. And by the end of the year, given all of the turmoil, that would be a successful year for Cleveland, depending on what happens in the postseason. Still worried, like I said, about the Harden-Mitchell fit. It's interesting, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned Naquan Tomlin. There are plenty of games that I watch, and I'm like, is he just better than Jared Allen? Should it just be him and Evan Mobley out there? Like, he's killing teams on the glass. I think in a Knicks-Pistons series, he would play, like, at least 20 minutes a game because he brings physicality. He's an athlete. He's really good on the glass. I could absolutely see that, but not like being a crazy difference maker, but like whichever Martin twin is really good for the Heat on some given year, like different positions, but that level of playoff impact where it's like, who is this guy that just got, had 15 and 7 offensive boards? I really like him. I still just get concerned with end of game stuff. Who's their 5 going to be on the floor? Is it going to be Evan Mobley at the 5 and then 2 wings, Mitchell Harden? I don't like the idea of a team that has this much on the line in the postseason that doesn't know what their 5-man lineup is going to be at the end of the game. It's like even the Knicks that maybe have a little bit of a question, it's just one guy. You just have to figure out who the other guy is other than Cat, the 2 wings, and Brunson, and even then maybe Mitchell Robinson for defensive purposes. You just have to figure out one of the 5 guys. The Cavs, it just still makes me nervous. kind of what their end of game lineups would be. But I could absolutely see a scenario in which they're in the conference finals and playing, either Detroit or the Knicks, depending on how the standings work out. One interesting note on the Cavs as we continue our theme of fun facts here. James Harden has 58 points so far as a Cleveland Cavalier through 3 games. At that pace, he needs to play just 8 more games to pass Anthony Bennett on the Cavs all-time scoring list.
That's nuts.
Anthony Bennett scored 217 points total as a Cav in his one season after being the number 1 overall pick in 2013.
That's insane. It's just like, will we trust Harden in the playoff series? We'll have to see. So I'm interested to see. You had them 9. I assume there's going to be, I guess I know the 2 teams, but I wonder what the third team is going to, or no, we only have 2
There's
more
just
teams.
2 teams. Yeah,
I assume
there's 2 teams between Boston and Cleveland, and those are my 9 inner circle, quote unquote, contenders. And then I have, a couple of other teams on the outside of that. But yeah, I have 2 Western.
Yeah, I'm going to have
Conference
Charlotte
teams
10 just for everybody.
There you go.
I'll have a different
Hornets.
team at 10 just to get it to 10. But obviously it'll be maybe the longest long shot. So who do you have at number 8?
So I have them 7, but they're 8th here in
Yeah.
our draft, and it is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're 6th in offense, 7th in defense, 7th in net rating. Some issues for them. They foul a lot. They're 24th in the league in opponent free throws, and they don't shoot free throws well themselves. They're 29th in free throw percentage. They shoot a decent amount of them, but that in a playoff series is a big issue for me. That's a giant red flag for a team that obviously they play physical. That's cool, but they also play a bunch of bigs. They don't shoot free throws particularly well. There's been a bunch of teams over the history of the league that have played better in a playoff game and lost the game because they're down 12 on free throws. That would definitely concern me. But I still just think that the combination of how good they are defensively, a little bit of a re-energized Rudy Gobert defensively at times this year, where it seems like maybe a little bit more fleet of foot at times this season, and then obviously just their overwhelming size, defensive presence, and a team that I think we just continually underrate as postseason performers. They've made the conference finals back-to-back seasons, and I think that in the newness of San Antonio and a Houston team that we're going to talk about here in a second, we just kind of lose sight of, the Timberwolves have won 4 playoff series the last 2 seasons, and I would put them just behind Boston 7th in my rankings and ahead of, as you mentioned, Cleveland, and then Houston, spoiler alert, who I would put next. But
So, yeah, it feels like we're disrespecting them a little bit, having them this slow, just because they've been to back-to-back conference finals in a way. And you can make an argument they have, the 5th best player in the NBA in Anthony Edwards, or close to it. They maybe upgrade their weakest spot, which was kind of like a backup guard role, and they go from Rob Dillingham and Mike Conley, both net negatives for them this season, to Ayo Dosunmu, who's just a breath of fresh air for them off the bench. Gives them a little bit more.
And Mike Conley somehow still.
Oh, yeah, return, which they're just allowed to do. They could reacquire him. I guess if you get traded twice, I don't know what strings they had to pull there. They're like, Charlotte, please trade for Mike Conley and then release him. It's hilarious. So, getting out of Dosunmu is going to be such a massive upgrade for this team. They still maybe will have their limitations with their three-point shooting, what Julius Randle, what Naz Reid, what McDaniels, what Gobert are they going to get in a playoff series, but they at least have foundational pieces around Anthony Edwards. I mean, last year they make it to the conference finals. I would say that they didn't have as impressive as a playoff win as obviously their Nuggets round 2 series in 24. I wonder how the series would have gone last year against Golden State if Steph didn't get hurt in what was that, game 1, I think, or game 1, where he had that hamstring injury. So Minnesota goes down 2-0 to OKC. They blow them out in game 3, and then they just kind of lose in 5. So it's interesting to see how this bracket shapes out as well, because there's a good chance Minnesota could draw OKC in round 2, which they've had fair success against them this year, playing them pretty close and even beating them at times this season. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just also loaded. The Northwest Division has just Thunder, Nuggets, Timberwolves in a way. And I think 1 year, 2024, that was 1, 2, and 3 in the conference, which is just insane. So, yeah, I don't disagree. I would have had the Wolves next. I think the Wolves are better than the Celtics, the Cavs. But it's just that they're in the Eastern Conference. I like their chances a little bit more. Minnesota's just got to go through the gauntlet in the West. So I agree with you here.
And I think you mentioned Ant as, maybe the 5th best player in the league. I think that's pretty much right. But there still is just some, I think, slight underrating at times of Anthony Edwards, the way that he's just a lights out. He's not Steph level shooter off the ball, but he's really, really close. He's way closer to prime Damian Lillard than I think anyone ever wants to discuss in terms of how good he is, shooting off the dribble. And I think really their championship ceiling relies pretty much entirely on Anthony Edwards' continued growth as an on-ball playmaker, specifically in matchups against San Antonio and Oklahoma City, because they are not going to let Anthony Edwards beat them. They are going to double him. They are going to force him to make 80 reads a game out of the pick and roll, and he has to get 2 out of 3 of those right, absolute minimum, for them to have a chance in the series. And I feel confident that that's something he can continue to grow and develop to, someone that still I think is younger than we all realize. And I think if there's a scenario in which one of the San Antonio, I guess non-Denver, Oklahoma City teams make the finals, I really, really like the Wolves' chances because I'm worried, as I mentioned earlier, about the Spurs' health stuff with Wemby potentially. And just if there's a player in the playoffs in the West to take a big level up that obviously isn't Wemby, I think it's Ant, and I think that would result in them potentially in the finals. Now, overall, on the whole in the regular season, they haven't been overwhelmingly impressive, but I like their ceiling in the postseason. Also want to mention, by the way, Chris Finch, who we don't really talk about that much as like one of the better coaches in the league, but definitely is. If I remember correctly, when they got him, it was the middle of the year. They like took him off Toronto's bench in the middle of the season. So in February of 2021, he took over as a coach. Since that time, the Wolves have the 8th best record in the league, and they've gone to back-to-back Western Conference finals for a franchise that before Chris Finch got there, they had never won a playoff series unless Kevin Garnett was on the roster, and they'd only won 2 in that scenario. Then they had the one Jimmy Butler year where they made the playoffs because they beat the Nuggets in the last game of the year. Other than that, this has been a by far crazy, unprecedented run of success the last 2.5 seasons now for Minnesota, and then even going back to February of 2021 as well. So just want to give Chris Finch some flowers there because you want to talk about, like, we make fun of the Kings all the time as like this crazy dysfunctional franchise. Minnesota was right there, and now we just see them as this kind of perennial conference finals contender.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of Timberwolves fans get, like, if they go on a losing streak, they get fed up with Chris Finch too, and you can always use the grass is always greener on the other side if they got rid of Finch. I think it benefits that Chris Finch got to inherit like Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. Unfortunately, those other head coaches dealt with like Shabazz Muhammad and whiffed on first round picks. Who was, I guess they had Wiggins as well, and they traded for Jimmy Butler, which kind of set them back a little bit in a way towards the late 2010s. But
we just want to take 2 minutes to name failed Timberwolves first round picks. We could do it.
We could do Johnny Flynn. We could do Ricky Rubio. Derek Williams takes the cake. Did they draft?
I have a feeling you were a big Derek Williams believer. Just that's in my head. I feel like you were all in on Derek Williams.
He outplayed Kyrie in March Madness. I think his numbers and Michael Beasley's numbers of college, it's just like, I don't know how, it might be just like mental and like adaptation to the NBA level, but like he was a sophomore. The man shot 50. What did he shoot? He shot 57% on 75 3-point attempts in his sophomore year. That's not nothing. And then he proceeds to shoot like 29% at the NBA level.
It's a little like, I don't know, stylistically they're significantly different, but it's a little like Jabari Smith kind of with the Rockets where they picked him high. Oh, what is this guy going to be? He can really score. He can really shoot. And then Jabari Smith, within like 2 seasons, it was clear he wasn't going to be like a franchise guy. So he's like, okay, I'm going to guard and shoot, and I'm going to make $25 million doing it. Derek Williams just never did that. He just continued to try and be the franchise guy and score a bunch, and he just never became the I'm going to shoot well and be good on defense. Granted, there's size and physical profile differences there. I don't think we need to talk for 5 minutes about Derek Williams, but it is interesting, like you said, bringing in Tim Connolly from Denver, giving him like an ownership stake to run the team, and they've obviously been very successful, but like you said, because of maybe some of the front office work more so than Chris Finch. But I still think Chris Finch is good, and I think certainly coming from that Toronto team that obviously was really successful with him there and then kind of fell off after.
It's hilarious in every sport too, where you just like everybody hates their head coach. Like I'm telling you right now, like Rockets fans, they're fed up with Udoka. Timberwolves fans are fed up with Finch.
They are ready to do like a parade of this. They're gonna like protest at the stadium or something. They are so far out on Ime Udoka, it's not even funny.
It's interesting. So segue, we'll have the Rockets next. You could say
our
that the
eighth best contender. Hates their coach.
I guess this is technically not. I thought this is your 8th.
It is my 8th, but if we're doing like an Instagram graphic, this is our 9th team because you picked Cleveland 7th. I just picked Minnesota 8, and then the Rockets are 9.
Rockets 9, yeah. 6th in net rating, 5th in defensive rating, 7th in offensive rating. They have not been a good team over the last month or so since the year hit 2026. I felt like them and the Hornets just basically swapped talents in a way. I thought their season was officially over if they lost to the Shea-less OKC on Saturday. They come back, they win that game by 6 points. They beat the Clippers, boosted the Clippers on a Kawhi Leonard game winner. I know Reed Shepherd hasn't played good defense, but I thought him not on the court to close out that Clippers game when nobody could hit a 3 was a little inexcusable in a way. And the Rockets have Kevin Durant. They do not have, most likely, Fred VanVleet, and they won't have Steven Adams for the playoffs. They're going to have a young, like Reed Shepherd still. Now they have a playoff series under their belt with Eason, Jabari, Amen, and Şengün. But, man, it's tough to really see Amen Thompson and how teams are going to play him in a playoff series when he is on offense, because they're going to treat him like a center. They're not going to guard him whatsoever on the perimeter. They're going to be in drop coverage 100%, and then they're going to be able to double team Kevin Durant. They're going to be able to double team Şengün in the post, and if they can rotate properly, it's going to be a nightmare for the Houston Rockets. So they have a high ceiling because they have Kevin Durant and what Şengün could possibly be in the playoffs 100%. They need to be healthy. They need Dorian Finney-Smith to play like he's worth $13 or $14 million, whatever they gave him. They need Jabari Smith Jr. to look like a 3rd overall pick. And This team did not add anybody in the trade deadline. Maybe they're a buyout team. Maybe they're a surprise Jeremy Sohan team. Maybe, I don't know, Chris Middleton or somebody like that gets bought out and they add some guy because they need, I think, one more bench piece in the playoffs. But it's hard to take them over any of the West teams we talked about right now. And I think we give a slight edge to Minnesota because they've been there recently.
Right. They are 7th in offense, 5th in defense, 6th in net rating, none of which matters because they are a completely different basketball team without Steven Adams, and all of their flaws are further accentuated by those two injuries. I think a fully healthy Rockets team is significantly higher on this list, but other than obviously Kevin Durant, I think the two guys they couldn't have afforded to lose are the two guys they've lost for the entire season, because you mentioned the Amen Thompson issue, teams playing off of him, guarding him with the center. That becomes much easier to deal with when you have an orchestrator like Fred VanVleet that can get guys the ball in their spots, that can just attract a crowd in a pick and roll, and then you have to help off somebody, and then Amen Thompson's just standing in the middle of the lane by himself. Can't do that because you don't have a point guard. And then Steven Adams covers up all of the offensive issues. This team in the beginning of the year was one of the best offensive teams in the league, despite getting in absolute rock fights on a night-to-night basis because they had a crazy offensive rebounding rate. That is now also out the window. I think a fully healthy Rockets team is probably in that top tier of contention. Unfortunately, that just hasn't happened. There's certainly still some roster construction issues with not having another plan outside of VanVleet and, like you said, not adding anyone at the deadline. But there is just a lot of statistical profiles that point towards this Rockets team maybe losing in the first round, maybe ceiling being a second round exit. They are 29th in threes attempted, and they are 24th in turnovers. That combination, being bottom 7 in both those categories, has never resulted in a conference finals, ever, in the history of the entire league. So the closest, if you want a historical comparison, is the 23-24 Wolves, who were 23rd in threes and 22nd in turnover. So it's not that far off from where the Rockets are, but that kind of gives you an idea of what category you're putting them in terms of the even just contenders to make the conference finals. It would require all of their wins would have to be first to 100 wins. I think if Houston ends up making a run, it would have to be absolute rock fights, like 102-97 in order for Houston to really make a run. But I mean, they're physical, they're athletic, they certainly do have strengths to their team. It's just, unfortunately, if you're going to turn the ball over a ton, you need to be getting a lot of value out of your possessions, aka making a bunch of threes, and they are not doing that. And they're also not rebounding offensively at the same rate without Steven Adams, obviously. So it becomes a let's not get too upset if we lose in the second round kind of season because we're missing those two guys.
100%. It just sucks that those guys got hurt because I think once, they didn't have maybe the highest percentage finals odds. I think what did I have them? I think I had them 2 or 3 going into the year. And then once Fred VanVleet got hurt, it was like, okay, now I have them 3 to maybe 5 in the Western Conference because it's a big loss. And they definitely could use another point guard out there just because of Amen's limitations as a shooter and Reed Shepherd's, I think, limitations with his size going forward. So that leaves us with our last spot. I'll preface in Golden State would have been here if Jimmy didn't tear his ACL 100% for me. Do you have a team in mind for this 10th spot? Because you're technically up, but I could run it if you want.
So just for a quick recap, my tier 1 was Thunder, Spurs, Nuggets, Thunder, Spurs, Nuggets, Pistons, Knicks. And then kind of the next tier was Celtics, Rockets, Wolves, Cavs. My other 3 teams that I had for my 10th spot, I have a less than 1% chance for any of these teams to make the conference finals, but if we need a 10th for a round number, it would be between Toronto, LA, and Phoenix. Those would be my 3 teams.
Those were my 3 as well. I think I'll eliminate Phoenix. I think they're a great story, and I talked about them a little bit yesterday on one of my channels, and it's just they're playing with house money this year. They've exceeded expectations. Maybe they're a Jeremy Sohan team. Who knows? I struggle to see them winning multiple playoff series in a way. I think it comes down between Toronto and Los Angeles. And I do think in terms of a team better suited for the playoffs, it's the Lakers in a way because of their offense and how they could just maybe win the opposite of the Rockets games and they're winning 133, 131 in every game. Mm-hmm. But it's just the path in the West is so unrealistic for the Lakers to make it out of. So if you just want to say the East and use that as the Raptors argument, that's fun. It's tough because I think the Lakers are a better team, but I think the Raptors have an easier path.
Yeah, I would go the same way as well, where I think if Phoenix or the Lakers were in the East, I think they would be 10th on the list. But given that they're not, I just can't see a scenario. If I'm thinking about, if I think you can make the conference finals, to me, you're a contender. And I think I could see the Raptors somehow making the conference finals. I think in the West, I would be pretty surprised. Unless Luka averages 40, 12, and 7 in the entire postseason, I'd be really surprised if either the Lakers or the Suns made the conference finals. Whereas for the Raptors, I mean, I could see them in some scenarios beating either the Knicks or the Pistons, depending on which side of the bracket they end up on, and making the conference finals. But that would be how I would rank it. And like I said, I think there's a significant tier break between those top 5, then those 4, and then everyone else.
Yeah, so it could just kind of be like a Raptors Lakers like throw in here if we wanted to put a team in specifically. I guess I'll bank on LeBron, Reeves, and Luka if they're healthy, and maybe they draw Houston in round 1 or somehow. I mean, the Lakers. I mean, it's possible. I mean, they're only a game and a half out of the 5 seed. And they could draw Houston in round 1. They could get their revenge against Minnesota. It's not impossible to beat those teams.
It's weird, though, because even though I think the Lakers have like a slightly better percentage chance of making a run, if I'm a like survive and advance team, like just get me to the next round healthy, if I'm the Thunder, if I'm the Nuggets, if I'm the Spurs, I would much rather play the Lakers than the Suns because the Suns are going to beat me up. I'm going to have to really, like, you can get easy wins against the Lakers because they don't guard. I don't think you're going to get any easy wins against Phoenix. You might win in 5, but it's going to be like some of those series we've seen in the past where the Celtics sweep a team, but they struggle in every game. Like it might be one of those. So I'd rather, I think, play the Lakers weirdly, but I don't think Phoenix, unfortunately, has a chance to make the conference finals. It's a really cool story, and obviously they nailed the coach, and they've got some moves they could potentially make in the future, but that would be where I would land with those 3 teams.
Totally agree. So we'll see what ends up happening going forward. To recap, in our draft, it was Thunder, Nuggets, Pistons, Knicks, Spurs, Celtics, Cavs, Wolves, Rockets, and then kind of like Raptors, Lakers in a way. And they give a shout out to the Suns as well. And then maybe the Hornets, if we actually want to have Hornets fever, depending on if they get in any fights down the stretch. So yeah, that's going to be our contender draft. I'm excited to watch these teams go up against each other for the rest of the season. I mean, all the teams we listed will be competitive. I mean, Orlando, Philly, Miami, Charlotte. Atlanta doesn't own their first. They're going to try to win. I don't know about Milwaukee. I feel like they got 1 foot in, 1 foot out right now in terms of them being competitive. Maybe your guy Cam Thomas changes the season.
Crazy. I will say, if there's one outside, like if there's one team that maybe we should have talked about slightly longer that we didn't, that I could see, oh, they're on a run. I do think we're underrating a little bit the fact that the Magic have just never had their entire team healthy for the entire season. Like all 3 of their main guys just have not played at all. And although the vibes are really bad around Paolo right now, and Franz is coming back from an injury, and all these different guys, like the core 4 of those players, I could see a scenario where they're really scary in the postseason. I just have a hard time putting faith in that, given just some of the Paolo. There's just bad vibes around the Magic.
I thought the same thing because when they ran Paolo at the 5 and they had Franz, Suggs, Black, and Bane out there on Tuesday against Milwaukee, beat them, blow them out. They look great, and I'm like, I thought they were going to be better in the second half because I'm just thinking that we got to get them healthy at least once. And then I'm watching Ousmane Dieng, Jericho Sims, and Cam Thomas torch this team. And I'm out. I'm so out. It's so frustrating. I'm going to want to keep getting bought in. Maybe it's a coaching thing. Maybe it's a stylistic thing with Paolo and Franz out there just not working out. And Paolo cannot play off-ball offense whatsoever in a way and struggles to get into his rhythm. It's just so frustrating because the team is so talented to be 27-25 or whatever they are at this point, and I don't think they're winning a playoff series.
I could see them, though, as like next year, I could see them as last year's Cavs, where they change the coach and all of a sudden they win 60 games. Like I could definitely see that. And I don't think it's a talent issue. They're a very good team. I just think that the way the team is put together, if they could snap their fingers and magically make Paolo's talent turn into something that actually fits the rest of the roster, I think they're one of the most talented teams in the conference. But the way that they need to play, like they need Paolo to be a screener a lot of the time. He doesn't want to do that. What the hell is he doing? He's like been the best player on every team he's played in for his entire life. Why is all of a sudden he's setting on ball screens? Like it's kind of like when the Bucks like won the title, Giannis was a really willing screener, and then after that he was like, I'm good. I like the basketball now, and that's kind of where Paolo is for them. And then even if you did that, they don't have a great floor spacing 5 to play alongside him on offense, so he can be a screener. And then if you play him at the 5 on defense, you're going to give up 140 points a game, which the entire identity of your team is built around guarding. So I don't know. I would be very interested to watch them in the playoffs with full expectation that it is going to be a disappointment, but I think maybe a little bit of a disservice to them to not talk about them a little bit more in this context because of how talented they are, and maybe we're understating how much injuries have impacted their overall season. But like you said, you catch the Magic on the wrong night and you might think they're like a 28-win team. So
yeah, no, totally fair, because they do have the talent to at least be more competitive in a round 1 series and maybe some of the teams that we brought up. So that will be it for us. We hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the Just Ballin Podcast. podcast. I think next week we'll still have a scheduling, like maybe just one episode next week as well, as we had one episode this week. So just an update for you guys as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let us know maybe your contenders as well. Maybe you can give us your top 5 or anything that you disagree with down below. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we'd appreciate a rating and review. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.